Good day, everyone. Today we will discuss about the Module 10, Cry of Balintawak, Lesson 10, Monastic Supremacy in the Philippines, and I am the first reporter, Kazaila Dara Fiquizan. Only he is truly a patriot who, whatever his post, high or low, tries to do the greatest possible good to his countrymen. Apolinaria Mabini. Objectives. What will you learn in this module? At the end of this module, you should be able to first, recognize the historical events in achieving the Philippine independence. Second, criticize the historical data and facts through critical thinking. And third, reconstruct history by developing critical thinking skill. Abstraction. It is surprising that there are different versions on the dates for the first cry of the revolution as well as its venue. This controversy up to this time remains unsolved. It is believed that the so-called cry took place in Balintawak, but others would say that it really happened in Pugadlawin. Nevertheless, there are different versions to consider in knowing the real date and place of the cry. These include Pia Valenzuela's controversial Cry of Pugadlawin, Santiago Alvarez, The Cry of Bahay Toro, Gregorio de Jesus' version of the first cry, and Guillermo Malsancay's The Cry of Balintawak. So there are a lot of different versions of the first cry of revolution as well as its venue. So the controversy of this until now is remain unsolved. So for us, in order to have knowledge about the first cry of revolution, a lot of version was released, like the version of Dr. Pia Valenzuela, The Cry of Pugadlawin, Santiago Alvarez, The Cry of Bahay Toro, Gregorio de Jesus' version of the first cry, and Guillermo Masangkay's version, The Cry of Balintawak. So, in our report, we will discuss about the different version of the first cry of revolution, and the first is Dr. Pia Valenzuela's The Cry of Pugadlawin. So first, let us know who is Pio Valenzuela is. Pio Valenzuela y Alejandrino was a Filipino physician and a revolutionary leader. At the age of 23, he joined the Society of Katipunan, a movement which sought the independence of the Philippines from Spanish colonial rule and started the Philippine Revolution. He was born in July 11, 1869, and he died at April 6, 1956. His full name is Pio Valenzuela y Alejandrino, and his spouse is Marciana Castro. His parents were Lorenza Alejandrino and Francisco Valenzuela. He studied at the Colegio de San Juan de Letran, University of Santo Tomas. Pio Valenzuela's controversial cry of Pugadlawin. This controversial version of the cry of Pugadlawin has been authorized by no other than Dr. Pio Valenzuela, who happened to be the eyewitness himself to the event. So the cry of Pugadlawin is written by Dr. Pio Valenzuela, who is witness to the event, and in his version, he wrote it based on what he saw in the happenings and in the events of the first cry of revolution. In his first version, he told that the prime staging point of the cry was in Balintawak on Wednesday of August 26, 1896. He held this account when the happenings or events are still vivid in his memory. So as he wrote his first version, the happenings or events that he wrote in his first version are still vivid in his memory. So on the other hand, later in his life, and with a fading memory, he wrote his memoirs of the revolution without consulting the written documents of the Philippine Revolution and claimed that the cry took place at Pugadlawin on August 23, 1896. So as he writes his first version with a vivid memory of the happenings and in the events, on the other hand, later in his life, when he is already experiencing memory loss or with the fading memory, so he wrote the memoirs of revolution without consulting the written documents of the Philippine Revolution and claimed that the cry, ang cry daw, nagtook place sa Pugadlawin on August 23, 1896. So based on Dr. Pio Valenzuela's account, this was his topic. So, August 1896, he said that the first place of refugee of Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, Procopio Bonifacio, Teodoro Plata, and Aguedal del Rosario, and Pio Valenzuela himself. So, the first five arriving there is on August 19, and Pio Valenzuela himself arrived in August 20, 1896. So, the first place where some 500 members of Katipunan met on August 22, 1896 was the house and yard of Apolonio Samsong at Kangkong. So aside from the person mentioned above, among those who were there were Bishop Pantas, Alejandro Santiago, Ramon Bernardo, Apolonio Samson, and others. So, August 23, 1896, 1,000 members of the Katipunan met and carried out considerable debate and discussion on. So Dr. P. Valenzuela said that views were only exchanged and no resolution was debated or adopted. So, it was at Pugadlawin in the house, storehouse, and yard of Juan Ramos, son of Melchora Aquino, where over 1,000 members of the Katipunan met and carried out considerable debate and discussion. So ano si Dr. P. Valenzuela, ang exchange lang daw is views, wala daw resolution. Then, sa Pugadlawin sila nag-discuss sa storehouse ni Juan Ramos, anak ni Melchora Aquino. So, naaday 1,000 ka members sa Katipunan and nagaplan sila og considerable na debate og discussion. So, August 29, 1896, the discussion was on whether or not the revolution against the Spanish government should be started. So only one man protested and fought against a war, and that was Teodoro Plata. So, Teodoro Plata was Bonifacio's brother-in-law. So, si Teodoro Plata daw ang protest, only one man yan ni protest, aningon jud siya na mo fought jud daw against sa war. Ana siya makiglaban jud daw against sa war. So, among the present at this meeting were Enrico Cipriano, Alfonso Pachero, Thomas Remigio, Sinforoso San Pedro, and others. So, beside the person's name above, so napadyo mga present na tao. So, mo ni sila si Enrique Cipriano, Alfonso Pachero, Thomas Remigio, Sinforoso San Pedro, and others. So, after the tumultuous meeting, many of those present tore their cedula certificate and they shouted. So after sa kanang napakaingay na meeting kasi kay daghan man kaayo over 1,000 members of Katipunan, diba? So chaos jud kayo na ang meeting. So daghan jud kay nag-ideas, daghan kayo mo suggest. So chaos kay ang meeting. So after sa ilahang tumultuous meeting, so many of those present tore their cedula. So, after sa ilang meeting, ilahang gigisi ilang cedula. And they shouted, "Long live the Philippines! Long live the Philippines!" And that would be all. The next part is the cry of Bahay Toro, and it will be reported by my groupmate Jessa Mary Ponte. I hope that you learned something from my report, and thank you for listening.
So let's proceed to the cry of Bahay Toro. The version of the cry was written by Santiago Alvarez on August 24, 1896. According to my research, Santiago Alvarez was a revolutionary general and a founder of and honorary president of the First Directorate of Nacionalista Party, also known as Kidlat ng Apoy, because of his inflamed bravery and dedication as a commander of Cavite's famous battles, and he was celebrated in present-day Cavite City as the hero of the Battle of Dalahican. Santiago is well known as Katipunero from Cavite and a son of Mariano Alvarez. Mariano Alvarez, the leader of the Magdiwang faction in Cavite, stated in 1927 na ang cry took place in Bahay Toro, now in Quezon City, on August 24, 1896. Santiago is a relative of Gregoria de Jesus, who happened to be the wife of Andres Bonifacio. Santiago is not an eyewitness of his event. So, si Santiago Alvarez is dili siya ang nakawitness jud sa nahitabo unlike sa ubang author sa first version mentioned. So, wala man siya nakawitness or nakatestify, wala nahataga value or fair compared sa ubang author na part sa historic events. On August 23, 1896, 10 o'clock in the morning, the barn of Cabeza Melchora Katipuneros met together. About 500 Katipuneros arrived ready and eager to join the Supremo that led by Andres Bonifacio and his men. In August 24, 1896, the Supremo decided to hold a meeting inside the big barn for about 1,000 Katipuneros. That's all.
Gregorio de Jesus version of First Cry, August 25, 1896. Si Gregorio de Jesus ay pinanganak sa Caloocan noong ika-9 ng Mayo taong 1875. Siya ay anak ng ulirang mag-asawang sina Nicolas de Jesus at Baltazara Alvarez. Siya ay kabiyak ng dibdib o asawa ng Supremo ng Katipunan na si Andres Bonifacio. Kilala din siya sa bansag na ina ng Katipunan, ina ng Himagsikan, at lakambini ng Katipunan. One of the participants in the drama of the Philippine Revolution of 1896 was Gregoria de Jesus, the wife of Supremo Andres Bonifacio and the lakambini of the Katipunan. She was a custodian of the secret documents, sales, and some weapons of Katipunan, and constantly risked her life in safeguarding them. After the outbreak of the revolution in August 1896, she went to live her parents in Caloocan while Bonifacio and his men gathered in hills of Balintawak for the War of Liberation. When warned the Spanish authorities were coming to arrest her, she fled to Manila and later joined her husband in the mountains and shared the hardship and sacrifice of the patriot's life with him. According to her version of the first cry, it occurs near Caloocan on August 25, 1896, as follows. The activities of the Katipunan had reached nearly all corners of the Philippines archipelago, so that when its existence was discovered and some of the members arrested, we immediately returned to Caloocan. However, as we were closely watched by the agents of the Spanish authorities, Andres Bonifacio and other Katipuneros left the town after some days. It was then that uprising began with the first cry of the for freedom on August 25, 1896.
The Cry of Balintawak. This version was written by Katipunan Guillermo Masangkay. Masangkay is an eyewitness of the historic event and a childhood friend of Bonifacio. According to him, the first rally of the Philippines Revolution happened on August 26, 1896 at Balintawak. Correspondingly, the date and site presented are accepted by the preliminary years of the American government. August 26, 1896, a big meeting was held in Balintawak at the house of Apolonio Samson, then the cabeza of the barrio of Caloocan. Among those who attended, he remembered that Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Jacinto, Aguido del Rosario, Tomas Remedio, Bricio Pantas, Teodoro Plata, Pio Valenzuela, Enrique Pacheco, and Francisco Carrion. They were all leaders of Katipunan and composed the board of directors of the organization. Delegates from Bulacan, Cabanatuan, Cavite, and Borong were also present. The purpose was to discuss when the uprising was to take place. Oro Plata, Bricio Pantas, and Villa Valenzuela were opposed to start the revolution too early. They reasoned that people would be distressed if they start the revolution without the adequate preparation. Plata was very forceful in his argument, stating that the uprising could not very well be started without the arms and foods for the soldiers. The last part will be discussed by Johnny Cedric Lausa.